Hi, I'm Kat, I play Sims, and I built a werewolf house on a street for occults in The Sims 4. I do random wheel spins to get which occult I'm going to do next, so the third in the series I ended up with werewolf. I've already got all of the footprints down on the street from each house, but I decided to make this one story above ground and a basement level as well. So I'm just sorting out the floor plan now. I knew that I wanted a rage room in the bottom, so I used Restoration Workshop lights to make it look a little bit more like basement-y down there. And I just put a lot more industrial looking stuff inside. I rarely use a lot of the stranger looking stuff from the Werewolves pack, so I went with a sort of colourful roof texture in the end with the metal. And I used more oranges and brick tones on the outside. I knew I wanted it to look a little bit more run down than the mermaid house next to it, so I just put a few different windows in there with the orange as the main colour. I tried to match the brick to what was on the outside of the windows, but honestly, none of the swatches were actually a perfect match, so that was a little bit strange. I put up a couple of little chimney pieces and a weather vane. I was just trying to give some interest to the outside, so I added some ivy and stuff as well. I knew I was going for a very rough, unkempt type of look, so I was using a lot of the stuff from the Werewolves pack. I decided to give them more of a chain link fence to fence in their yard area, and I made it accessible from the back with just a plain wooden door. I textured everything with like really dark dirt terrain paint and didn't make it too neat. I decided to make the entire yard space just flat mud texture, and I put a little bit of stone out front before I went into debug and started finding stuff to clutter up the yard. So I got a bunch of like wood and tarp covered bits and put those in. I was using a lot of messy grass and mud mounds, planks and things. I just sort of used as much debug from werewolves as I could get. I tried rotating with tool mod, but it wasn't doing quite what I wanted, so I ended up just raising things and piling them up. I put a couple of these junked out cars that were in the werewolves debug, and then just surrounded them by plants so it looked like they'd been there for absolutely forever. I decided I did want a real car in the back as well, or as real as you can get in The Sims. So I put in a truck and gave it a sort of gap that it could get out the fence, and then I filled the back of it with more tops and barrels and wood and stuff. Once that was full of as many bits from debug as I wanted, I went around the edges and just put some of the messy hedges around so that the edge of the house wasn't quite as stark. I shifted things around a little bit around the back to make sure nothing was clipping, and I did have to go back and check that I wasn't clipping any hedges and plants in the house. Once again, as a small miracle, I remembered a mailbox and I put one of the Eco Lifestyle dumpsters in, and then I decided to go straight down to the basement and do these bits. So I put some industrial stairs and railings in there. I put a stone texture in what was going to be the little bathroom, and I put a sort of unfinished stucco on the other two rooms. I used a get-together stone on the floors, and then I went upstairs and I used the rewards event wood tone on the walls and brick in the bathroom up here. I went for a brick floor as well, and then a really rough wood floor from Cottage Living, and just a load of plain brown doors dotted about. Downstairs for the rage room, I knew I wanted that door from Werewolves with the big graffiti of the werewolf on it, and then I made an entryway with a little archway and decided to start with the bathroom downstairs. I used the outdoor retreat tarp shower down here, as well as a base game toilet and the sink from Laundry Day, which looked quite rough as well. And I just put messy clutter in here. I put a basic wooden framed mirror, and then I decided I wanted a shelf above the toilet, and I got this one from the greenhouse kit because it sort of fit with the wooden thing I was going for. I put some towels up there, and then I put a little dog toy as a kind of joke about the werewolves. I added a bit of laundry clutter up there, I put some soap down, and then I went into this room, which I decided was kind of a kids or teens room. And this was the teen that was growing up into a werewolf and needed the rage room. So I've got a bed and desk from Werewolves, and I ended up putting a desk chair in from Crystal Creations because it went better. I gave them a journal so they can work on their emotional control. I've got the corkboard and a fish tank in there as well. I got one of the Strangerville lava lamps to change the tone of the lighting in here a little bit, and then I decided to give them one of the sort of entertainment centres from Tiny Living and some bean bags and cushions to sit on around the edges. I put up posters and decals from the Werewolves pack, and I decided to put a few scratches and damage around the rage room door. I put up a big decal next to the bed, and then I decided to layer some rugs, so I've got one from Werewolves and one from Laundry Day. I put up a kind of tapestry item from high school years above the bed. I forget about this swatch all the time, and then I decided to move on to the rage room. So the first items in here were the damage to the walls. I used pretty much all of the bits and pieces from Werewolves for this. There's scratches and brick damage. I think I used some from For Rent and Jungle Adventure as well, possibly some vampires. Just putting as much damage on the walls as possible. I used a graffiti piece from Get Famous, and I put up the ripped painting from Werewolves as well. I wanted roughed up furniture, so I used the Werewolves sofa and I put some pipe work in the corner. I wanted exercise equipment in here as well, so the werewolf could really take out their anger. I had to move things around a little bit because they do have really large footprints. I put a little bit more of seating in that's like tires. I looked through basically every item in the pack, and I ended up just putting up a mirror and then putting in a rug as well and making that a bit bigger with tool mods so they fit the space. And then I moved up to the entryway upstairs. I used an industrial loft kit table. I put some clutter about from Werewolves and a mirror. I got a non-functional fuse box, put up some bags, and then I used the dog's welcome mat from Cats and Dogs just because I thought it was funny. I made the entryway a little bit smaller because I was pretty sure I couldn't fill the space, and I added a werewolves bookshelf in there, moved things around and put in a leather love seat as well, and then I just put up some curtains on the window. I did change the size and shape of a couple of the rooms a little bit, but I went backwards and forwards on it. I decided on a fireplace for the living room, and it was just a base game one. I raised up a base game TV on an angle to go on top of the fireplace. For the coffee table, I decided on one from Basement Treasures because it was roughed up and fit everything. I had an industrial loft sofa, and then I used a leather chair to go with it as well. I decided to use the game table from the Casanova Cave kit. It does have a sort of dirtyish brown swatch, so I put that in with a couple of chairs. I used a rug from Grown Together because it fit the colour scheme I was going for. And then I added a hutch in the corner from Eco Lifestyle just to fill that gap, and I put a hanging plant in as well, which I use a lot. I just finished it up with a couple of bits of artwork and some more plants, and then I went to the kitchen for the next bit. I actually really liked how the Jungle Adventure appliances looked for this one, and then I added horse ranch counters because they seemed the most logical with the rustic wood. I decided to put a bar in as well, which was from Party Essentials because that one can fit in any gap, and then I used the rewards event rustic wood table and chairs. I filled that corner with a plant and put in some candles on the wall at slightly different heights to each other, deliberately, and then I've got Crystal Creations artwork and one of my favourite mirrors against the wall to reflect the room back. At this point I remembered my ceiling paint, so I quickly went back and did that. And then I added a rug under the dining room table from Cats and Dogs in a sort of bluish swatch because it matches that accent colour on the walls. I put up a base game hood above the oven, and then I got some more horse ranch upper cabinets. I didn't really feel like clutter and open shelving, so I just went with those to fill the gaps, and I put in more curtains there as well. I put in some kitchen clutter from the kitchen clutter kit with cereal. I put in some horse ranch bits, and then I decided it would be funny to have some dog treats in the corner as well, and I put a cookie jar and some pots in, just making sure that those fit on top of the fridge without floating with tool mod. The hallway had a bit of an empty space in it, so I put a woodworking table in that corner from the rewards event we had a little while ago. In the bathroom, I got another outdoor retreat shower, a horse ranch sink, and then that base game toilet again. I just filled the corner with a hutch and moved things around a little bit to make it fill the space because I didn't use the big items that I thought I would, like a bathtub. I put some messy clutter around with some toilet rolls and laundry stuff and bits like that. I made the towels smaller to fit, and then I actually put a For Rent mirror up, which looked really nice, but it didn't really match the aesthetic of the rest of it looking back, and then I moved on to the bedroom. This one actually just got a base game bed and a mix of a couple of side tables from Horse Ranch. I put in a dresser from Eco Lifestyle that looks kind of like the walls, like mixed wood textures. a couple of sconces up above the bed and the dresser, and then I put another cats and dogs rug in and made it bigger to fit the room. The absolutely necessary open boot clutter appeared on the side table. I put some Grange Mudroom shoes, some games, and then some records in a box underneath. I got the messy laundry basket item. I decided to put in a toolkit from Restoration Workshop and a dirty mug and some other bits of clutter next to the bed just to fill the space a little bit. The last bit in here was decoration, so I just put up a few more of those werewolf scratches and the tarot card items from Life and Death, and I picked swatches of those that sort of matched the werewolf aesthetic. There was a horse ranch mirror, and then I quickly went outside again to add some skill building items, so I put some planters and a telescope. Terrain painted those, and then I was done, so enjoy the screenshots. Thanks for watching. Please consider a like and subscribe.